What if the sacred places we worship in today weren't originally built for the gods we know? Picture standing inside a towering temple, its stones whispering secrets from a time before the prayers now echoing through its halls. Across the globe, some of the most revered religious sites carry a hidden truth. They existed long before the faiths that now claim them. These ancient places were shaped by hands that worshipped different gods, celebrated forgotten rituals, and understood divinity in ways we can only begin to unravel. Today, we're stepping into the shadows of history to uncover 25 astonishing sites where the ground is older than the faiths built upon it, where the sacred is layered with mystery and the past never truly disappears. Think about the familiar places you associate with religion, the grand cathedrals, the serene mosques, the temples that draw pilgrims by the millions. Now strip away the names, the stories, the doctrines you know. Beneath them, you'll find older stones, older altars, older devotionals. These sites weren't just repurposed, they were reborn, their original meanings buried beneath centuries of reinterpretation. Why were these locations so special that new religions felt compelled to claim them? What power did they hold that made them irresistible to generation after generation of believers? The answers lie in the earth itself, in the way humans have always sought to connect with something greater by standing where others once stood. This isn't just a tour of ancient architecture, it's a journey into the heart of human spirituality. We'll walk through temples that began as pagan shrines, mosques built atop forgotten churches, and sacred mountains that have drawn worshippers for thousands of years under different names. Each site tells a story of continuity, of how faith evolves while the ground beneath it remains timeless. By the end, you'll see these places not just as religious landmarks, but as living archives of our shared longing for meaning. So let's begin where all great mysteries do beneath the surface, where the past waits to be rediscovered. Our first stop takes us to a windswept hill in southeastern Turkey, where the oldest known temple on Earth quietly appends everything we thought we knew about early civilization. Göbekli Tepe isn't just old, it's staggeringly ancient, built around 11,000 years ago by hunter-gatherers who hadn't yet invented pottery or domesticated animals. Imagine that, a monumental sacred site carved from stone before humans even settled into farming villages. The moment you see those massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing over 15 tons arranged in perfect circles, you realize this wasn't some rudimentary shrine. These stones were quarried, dragged, and erected with precision, their surfaces adorned with intricate carvings of foxes, scorpions, and birds frozen in motion. But here's the mystery. Who were these people worshipping? What rituals unfolded here beneath the open sky? Archaeologists still debate whether Göbekli Tepe was a temple, a burial complex, or something even more enigmatic. The absence of residential buildings suggests pilgrims traveled here from distant regions, drawn by a spiritual need we can only guess at. And then, centuries before the first Hebrew prayers, before Christ or the Quran, the site was deliberately buried, as if sealing away its secrets. What's undeniable is this place's haunting legacy. Long before Abrahamic religions reshaped the world's spiritual landscape, someone stood on this hill, gazing at the same pillars we see today, and felt the weight of the divine. Göbekli Tepe forces us to reconsider the origins of faith itself, proof that sacred ground exists long before we put names to the gods who inhabit it. From the sun-baked plains of Turkey, we journey northwest to the fog-draped Salisbury Plain, where one of the world's most iconic monuments stands guard over mysteries as old as time itself. Stonehenge, that ring of towering Sarsen stones, was already ancient when the Druids first set foot in Britain. Built in phases between 3000 and 2000 BC, this Neolithic marvel predates Celtic culture by over 1,000 years, yet its silhouette has become inseparable from modern pagan imagination. The scale of Stonehenge defies expectation. Picture this: 80 massive blue stones, some hauled over 150 miles from Wales, arranged with eerie precision. The largest uprights weigh up to 30 tons, equivalent to 5 adult elephants, yet Neolithic builders maneuvered them into place without wheels or metal tools. Why? The answer might lie in the heavens. During the summer solstice, sunlight pierces the monument's heart, aligning perfectly between the towering arches. Winter solstice sunset frames another sacred axis. This wasn't random, it was a celestial calendar carved in stone, a bridge between earth and sky. But Stonehenge's original purpose remains hotly debated. Excavations reveal cremated human bones dating back to its earliest phases, suggesting it began as a burial ground for elite families. Later, it may have transformed into a healing site. Blue stones were believed to have curative properties. Then there's the theory of unity. Some scholars argue it served as a gathering place for scattered Neolithic clans, its construction a monumental act of collaboration. What's undeniable is the power this place held across millennia. Long before Druids conducted rituals here, Bronze Age people left offerings. Before them, Neolithic farmers raised the first earthworks. Each generation projected their beliefs onto these stones, a phenomenon we'll see again and again: sacred spaces outliving the faiths that birthed them. Stonehenge's true magic isn't just in its astronomical genius, but in its ability to whisper to something primal in all of us, calling us back to a time when the boundary between the earthly and the divine was written in stone. Now let's step into the heart of Rome, where one of the most astonishing architectural feats of the ancient world still stands, not as a relic, but as a living testament to the layers of faith that have claimed it. The Pantheon, completed in 126 CE under Emperor Hadrian, began its life as a temple to all the gods of Rome. Its very name means "of all deities," yet today it's consecrated as a Christian church, Santa Maria ad Martyrs. This seamless transformation from pagan shrine to sacred Christian space wasn't just pragmatic. It was symbolic, a deliberate rewriting of spiritual meaning while preserving the physical grandeur that made it extraordinary. What makes the Pantheon truly breathtaking isn't just its history, but its engineering. Look up and you'll see the largest unreinforced concrete dome ever built, a record it's held for nearly 2,000 years. The dome's oculus, a circular opening at its apex, floods the interior with a beam of sunlight that moves like a celestial clock, illuminating different sections of the floor throughout the day. Imagine standing beneath it in ancient times, the light tracing a path across statues of Jupiter, Venus, and Mars, as if the gods themselves were being summoned by the sun. The precision of its construction is staggering. The dome's thickness decreases as it rises, and its weight is supported by hidden chambers within the walls, a masterpiece of Roman ingenuity. But here's the twist: when Pope Boniface IV rededicated the Pantheon as a Christian church in 609 CE, he didn't just repurpose a building, he performed an act of spiritual alchemy. The same space where Romans once offered sacrifices to deified emperors became a sanctuary for Christian martyrs. The statues of pagan gods were replaced with frescoes of saints, yet the oculus remained, now framing the light of a new divine narrative. This wasn't destruction, it was reinvention, proof that sacred spaces retain their power even when the gods they honor change. What's remarkable is how the Pantheon's design transcends any single religion. That dome, with its perfect proportions, seems to echo the vault of heaven itself, an architectural hymn to the divine that resonates across faiths. Even Michelangelo, standing inside centuries later, declared it the work of angels, not men. Today, visitors, whether pilgrims or tourists, still tilt their heads back in awe, just as Roman worshippers once did, united by the sheer wonder of human devotion made tangible in stone. The Pantheon doesn't just bridge religions, it transcends them, reminding us that the desire to reach for the sacred is etched into our very bones. Now, let's cross the Aegean Sea to the once great city of Ephesus, where the marble columns of the Temple of Artemis reach toward the sky like broken fingers grasping at forgotten divinity. This wasn't just another temple, it was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, a monument so magnificent that the Greek poet Antipater wrote it made the sun himself pause in awe. Built in the 6th century BC, its 127 towering pillars enclosed a sanctuary twice the size of the Parthenon, housing a cult statue of Artemis so sacred that thousands journeyed across the Mediterranean just to glimpse it. But the Artemis worshipped here wasn't the virgin huntress of Greek myth. Ephesus' goddess was something far older, a many-breasted deity of fertility, her torso adorned with symbolic protrusions representing abundance, her arms outstretched in blessing. This was the Great Mother of Anatolia, a goddess of wild nature and childbirth whose worship predated Greek colonization by centuries. When Greek settlers arrived, they didn't erase her. They renamed her Artemis and built this staggering temple in her honor, layering new myths over ancient reverence. Centuries after pilgrims left offerings at Artemis' feet, something remarkable happened. As Christianity spread through Asia Minor, the temple's ruins became associated with a very different sacred figure, the Virgin Mary. Local tradition held that Mary spent her final years near Ephesus, cared for by the Apostle John. By the 5th century CE, pilgrims no longer came to honor Artemis, but to venerate Mary at the newly built Church of the Theotokos, just a stone's throw from the ruined temple. The springs once sacred to Artemis became holy wells, her sacred grove a place of Christian prayer. Even the temple's destruction echoes with spiritual irony. According to Acts 19, a Christian preacher's denunciation of Artemis sparked riots among her devotees. Yet when Gothic invaders finally sacked the temple in 263 CE, they found its treasures already gone. Legend says Mary herself appeared to protect them. Today, a single reconstructed column stands where the wonder once soared, but the ground beneath remains thick with devotion. Modern pilgrims still walk the processional way where Artemis priestesses once trod, now whispering Hail Marys where once they called upon the Mother of all. Here, as in so many sacred places, the names change, but the human need to kneel where others have knelt survives all revolutions of faith. High in the mist-shrouded Andes, where condors glide between jagged peaks, Machu Picchu clings to the mountainside like a sacred secret the earth refuses to surrender. Built in the mid-15th century at the height of the Inca Empire, this lost city was never truly lost to the people who remembered it, only forgotten by those who couldn't fathom its significance. But beneath its iconic terraces and precisely fitted stone temples lies a tantalizing possibility that the Incas didn't create this sanctuary from nothing, but built upon ground already humming with older, deeper magic. Walk through the ruins today and you'll notice something curious. The Temple of the Sun, with its semicircular wall and trapezoidal windows perfectly aligned to catch the winter solstice sunrise, mirrors celestial patterns seen at other Inca sites. Yet local oral traditions whisper of a time before the Incas, when the mountain was known as Machu Picchu, Old Peak, a name hinting at ancient reverence. Archaeologists have found evidence of agricultural terraces predating Inca construction, suggesting earlier cultures cultivated this sacred space. Some scholars argue the site's most sacred feature, the carved stone pillar called the Intihuatana, or hitching post of the sun, may rest atop an even older ritual stone, repurposed by Inca astronomers to track celestial events. The Spanish never found Machu Picchu during their conquest, sparing it the fate of Cusco's temples, which were torn down to build churches. But the site's abandonment wasn't an ending, it was a transformation. After the Inca fall, local communities continued leaving offerings at the springs and caves surrounding the ruins, maintaining spiritual ties to the land. Today, Quechua elders still speak of Apus, the mountain spirits who guarded Machu Picchu long before emperors claimed it. The Inca may have shaped the stone, but the mountain itself, the trembling earth, the sacred springs, was worshipped long before and long after their empire faded. What makes Machu Picchu so extraordinary isn't just its engineering, but its endurance as a palimpsest of faith. The same terraces that grew maize for Inca priests once fed earlier worshippers. The same stones that channeled the sun for imperial rituals may have anchored ceremonies lost to time. Even now, visitors report feeling an eerie resonance here, as if the mountain itself remembers every prayer ever whispered upon its slopes. Machu Picchu isn't just a ruin, it's a mirror reflecting humanity's unbroken dialogue with the divine, one civilization's sacred language written over another's, never fully erased. Deep in the rocky folds of Mount Parnassus, where eagles circle above olive groves, the ruins of Delphi, I whisper a truth far older than the Greek gods who made it famous. Long before Apollo claimed this place as his oracle, before pilgrims climbed the sacred way with gifts for the Pythia, this was holy ground. Archaeologists have found offerings, simple clay figurines, animal bones, dating back to the Neolithic era around 1600 BC. That's 700 years before Homer sang of Troy, a millennium before the Parthenon's first stone was laid. Whoever those earliest worshippers were, they sensed something extraordinary in this mountainside cleft, something worthy of reverence long before Zeus or Apollo entered human imagination. What transformed Delphi into the spiritual heart of the ancient world wasn't just mythology, it was geology. The temple complex sits directly over two tectonic plates grinding against each other, fissures in the earth venting ethylene and methane gases. When the Pythia, Apollo's priestess, sat atop her tripod chewing laurel leaves, these vapors likely induced the trances that produced her famous prophecies. The Greeks called this the omphalos, the navel of the world, but the site's power predates their understanding. Earlier cultures may have interpreted the same trembling earth, the same intoxicating springs, as signs of a different kind of divinity. The rituals here were as dramatic as they were mysterious. Imagine a seeker, a king perhaps, or a general climbing the steep path to the temple, leading a goat for sacrifice. After purification in the Castalian spring, he'd present his question to the Pythia, who'd descend into the temple's inner chamber, the Aditon. There, breathing those ancient gases, she'd utter riddles in a voice not quite her own. Know thyself, the temple's inscription warned, advice as potent today as it was when Croesus asked if he should wage war on Persia. The oracle replied he'd destroy a great kingdom. His own, yet Delphi's genius lay in its adaptability. When Christianity rose, the Byzantines built a church over Apollo's temple, redirecting devotion rather than denying the site's innate sanctity. Even now, visitors report a peculiar energy here, a whisper in the wind, a charge in the air. Perhaps it's the same force Neolithic farmers felt, the same tremor in the earth that convinced generations this was where heaven touched ground. Delphi endures not because one faith claimed it, but because the land itself seems to speak, indifferent to the names we give its mysteries. Rising from the Cambodian jungle like a stone mirage, Angkor Wat sprawls across 400 acres, a sacred city built not just to honor gods but to mirror the cosmos itself. When King Suryavarman II commissioned this masterpiece in the 12th century, he envisioned it as Mount Meru brought to earth, the Hindu universe made tangible, with its 5 peaked towers representing the mountain's summits and its vast moat symbolizing the cosmic ocean. Every inch of sandstone whispers devotion to Vishnu, the preserver god whose likeness once stood enshrined in the central tower. Yet wander its galleries today, and you'll find Buddha statues gazing serenely from niches where Hindu deities once resided, a quiet testament to one of history's most profound spiritual transformations. The shift began gradually, like water reshaping stone. By the late 13th century, Theravada Buddhism was gaining influence across Southeast Asia, its teachings of enlightenment resonating with Khmer rulers. Rather than demolishing Angkor Wat, as conquerors often did with sacred sites, they reinterpreted it. Hindu carvings of Vishnu reclining on the serpent Ananta weren't chiseled away. Buddhist artisans added lotus motifs beside them, creating a visual dialogue between faiths. In the temple's iconic bas-reliefs, scenes from Hindu epics like the churning of the ocean of milk now share walls with depictions of Buddha's previous lives, the Jataka tales. This wasn't erasure, it was evolution, a recognition that sacred narratives could coexist in the same hallowed space. What makes Angkor Wat extraordinary is how seamlessly it embodies this synthesis. The temple's very layout, originally designed to facilitate Hindu rituals of circumambulation, proved equally suited to Buddhist meditation. The long galleries meant for depicting Vishnu's triumphs became perfect for illustrating the Buddha's path to nirvana. Even the orientation shifted. While Hindu temples traditionally face east toward the rising sun, Angkor Wat's main entrance now faces west, aligning with Buddhist funerary practices. Some scholars argue this subtle change reflects its transition from a temple honoring a living god-king to a site venerating enlightened teachers of the past. Yet the stones guard older secrets still. Beneath the Hindu and Buddhist layers, folk animism lingers in the Naga serpent balustrades and spirit houses dotting the complex, reminders that before organized religion, people worshipped the land itself. Modern monks still light incense at shrines where locals once left offerings to Niktar, the ancestral spirits believed to inhabit ancient places. Angkor Wat's true power lies in this unbroken chain of reverence, a sacred space that has never stopped being holy, even as the prayers echoing through its corridors changed tongue after tongue. To walk its causeways today is to traverse not just a temple, but a living parchment where faiths have rewritten each other without ever blotting out what came before. In Istanbul, where the Bosphorus stitches two continents together, the Hagia Sophia rises like a monument to the very idea of sacred transformation. Built in just 5 years under Emperor Justinian in the 6th century, this colossal structure was conceived as the grandest church in Christendom, a declaration of Byzantine power and divine favor. When Justinian first stepped inside the finished cathedral, he reportedly whispered, "Solomon, I have surpassed thee," comparing his achievement to the legendary Jewish temple. The scale was staggering, a dome 180 feet high, appearing to float on a ring of light from 40 arched windows, its interior sheathed in gold mosaics that made worshippers feel they stood inside a living jewel. For nearly 1,000 years, this was the spiritual heart of Eastern Orthodoxy, where emperors were crowned and patriarchs prayed beneath the serene gaze of Christ Pantocrator. But history rarely leaves sacred spaces untouched. In 1453, when Mehmed II conquered Constantinople, he rode straight to the Hagia Sophia, dismounted at its doors, and sprinkled dust on his turban as a gesture of humility before converting it into a mosque. The transition wasn't destruction, it was metamorphosis. Christian mosaics depicting the Virgin Mary were covered rather than defaced. The geometric beauty of Islamic calligraphy now shared walls with shimmering tesserae of Christian saints. Minarets rose like sentinels at each corner, framing the original Byzantine dome in a new architectural dialogue. The mihrab, indicating the direction of Mecca, was carefully angled to align with the building's existing axis, proof that even in rededication, the building's genius commanded respect. What makes Hagia Sophia utterly unique is how visibly it wears these layers of faith. Peer into the apse and you'll find the Virgin and Child mosaic gleaming beside a giant medallion bearing Allah's name in gold Arabic script. Look up and the seraphim mosaics, their 6 wings once hidden under plaster, now watch over Islamic prayers alongside Quranic verses. Even the building's acoustics, designed for Gregorian chant, proved equally magnificent for the soaring cadences of the Adhan. This wasn't just architectural adaptation, it was a testament to how sacred spaces can transcend the doctrines that claim them. When Ataturk declared Hagia Sophia a museum in 1935, he wasn't stripping it of meaning, he was honoring its true nature as a palimpsest of human devotion. Visitors today can trace a finger along the marble floor worn smooth by centuries of Ne's Orthodox Christians, Muslim worshippers, awestruck travelers, all leaving invisible marks on the same stone. The building whispers a profound truth, that holiness isn't confined to one tradition, but lingers in the very walls where humanity has whispered its hopes to the divine across the ages. Hagia Sophia stands not as a trophy of conquest but as a bridge, its dome a mirror for heaven, no matter what name we give it. On the east bank of the Nile, where the river bends like a question mark, Luxor Temple rises from the golden haze, a monument to endurance, its sandstone columns bearing witness to 3,000 years of worship, conquest, and reinvention. Built around 1400 BC under Pharaoh Amenhotep III, this sprawling complex was originally dedicated to Amun-Ra, king of the gods, whose annual procession from Karnak Temple transformed Luxor into the beating heart of Egyptian spirituality. Yet walk its colonnades today and you'll find more than hieroglyphs. Roman frescoes peek from beneath layers of soot, Coptic crosses are etched into walls once reserved for cartouches, and near the sanctuary's heart, a weathered inscription in Greek proclaims Alexander the Great's divine right to rule. This isn't just a temple, it's a palimpsest of power where every conqueror felt compelled to leave their mark while leaving the sacred structure intact. The genius of Luxor Temple lies in its adaptability. Pharaohs from Ramses II to Nectanebo I expanded it, each adding courtyards and statues without erasing their predecessors' work. When Alexander arrived in 332 BC, he didn't raise the temple, he inserted himself into its narrative. Near the Holy of Holies, artisans recarved a relief of Amun-Ra to bear Alexander's features, transforming the Macedonian into a legitimate pharaoh in the eyes of the gods. His graffiti, a rare personal signature in the sacred space, reads like a confession of awe. Alexander came here and saw. Even the greatest military mind of his age couldn't resist the pull of this place's sanctity. Centuries later, the Romans would make Luxor Temple a stage for imperial cult worship. Emperors like Augustus plastered over Egyptian reliefs to paint their own images, converting the first pylon into a shrine for the legion's standards. Yet beneath the Roman whitewash, the original carvings survived, waiting. By the 4th century CE, as Christianity spread, the temple's hypostyle hall became a church, its columns framing altars to martyrs where once offerings to Amun-Ra had burned. The Christian artisans, too, left their mark. A fresco of the Virgin Mary gazes serenely across from a relief of the goddess Mut, as if the two divine mothers had reached across time to acknowledge one another. What's astonishing isn't just the layers, but how they coexist. In the temple's inner recesses, a Roman-era wall painting of Emperor Diocletian in full regalia stands mere feet from a pharaonic depiction of the god Khonsu. Outside, a medieval mosque built atop the ruins remains in use today, its minaret rising between lotus-topped columns. This continuity speaks to something deeper than practicality. It suggests that sacred spaces carry an almost magnetic pull, drawing reverence even from those who don't share their original faith. Luxor Temple endures not as a relic, but as a conversation in stone, where every era's whispers to the divine are preserved in the very walls. Emerging from the emerald embrace of the Guatemalan rainforest, the towering pyramids of Tikal stretch toward the heavens like stone fingers brushing the clouds. These iconic stepped temples, built by the Maya between 200 and 900 CE, seem eternally frozen mid-conversation with the gods, but scrape away just a few layers of history and you'll find something astonishing. The Maya weren't the first to declare this ground sacred. Beneath their limestone masterpieces lie traces of much older fires, whispers of rituals performed by hands that shaped clay centuries before the first Mayan kings claimed divine right. Archaeologists mapping the Great Plaza's subterranean secrets have uncovered deep, ash-filled pits containing charred animal bones and shattered pottery dating back to 800 BCE, over 1,000 years before Tikal's golden age. These aren't domestic hearths. Their strategic placement beneath later temples suggests ceremonial bonfires, possibly marking celestial events or ancestral veneration. Imagine these pre-Mayan people gathering in clearing where jaguars still prowled, lighting fires that cast flickering shadows on the ceiba trees they revered as bridges between worlds. By the time the Maya erected their first platforms around 300 BCE, they weren't building on empty land, they were inheriting a stage already consecrated by generations of sacred flame. What's especially fascinating is how the Maya incorporated these ancient energies into their own cosmology. Temple Roman 4, Ticol's tallest structure, aligns so precisely with the summer solstice sunrise that light pierces its doorway like a divine lance, a feat that may have echoed older solar observations made at the same site. The Maya didn't just build over the past, they absorbed it, transforming ancestral rituals into imperial pageantry. When rulers like Jasor Chan Kayawil I ascended temple by steep steps in elaborate jade masks, they weren't just performing for living subjects, they were stepping into a lineage of ceremony as old as the charcoal fragments now buried beneath their sandals. Modern LiDAR scans reveal even deeper mysteries. A network of hidden causeways and unexcavated platforms radiating from Ticol's core, suggesting the sacred geography extended far beyond what we see today. Local Lakandan Maya still speak of Okha, the entrances to the underworld they believe exist beneath the ruins. Perhaps these portals were always part of Ticol's power. The reason both ancient and modern peoples feel the air hum with something beyond history when standing among these stones. The true genius of Tikal isn't just in its soaring architecture, but in how it reminds us that sacred spaces are never truly new, only rediscovered, reimagined, and reborn under different names. Perched atop the Acropolis like a marble crown, the Parthenon has watched over Athens for nearly 2.5 millennia, but the goddess it was built to honor would hardly recognize it today. When the sculptor Phidias placed a towering gold and ivory statue of Athena Parthenos in its inner chamber in 438 BCE, the temple was a celebration of Athenian power, its friezes depicting mythical battles and civic processions in exquisite detail. Yet walk through its colonnades now, and you'll find traces of a far more complicated journey. Christian altars where pagan sacrifices once burned, Islamic prayer niches facing Mecca where saints' icons once hung. The transformation began subtly, like cracks forming in marble. By the 6th century CE, as Christianity swept through the Byzantine Empire, the Parthenon was rededicated as the Church of the Mother of God. The colossal Athena statue, long since looted or destroyed, was replaced with a fresco of the Virgin Mary cradling Christ. The east pediment sculptures of Athena's birth were chiseled away to make room for Christian imagery, while the interior columns were repositioned to create a nave fit for congregational worship. Yet in a remarkable act of preservation, many original friezes survived intact, either deemed harmless decoration or ingeniously reinterpreted. Scenes of Greek heroes battling centaurs suddenly took on new meaning as allegories of Christian virtue triumphing over sin. The temple's next metamorphosis came in 1458 when Ottoman forces converted it into a mosque. A minaret rose from one corner, its slender silhouette contrasting with the Doric columns below. The Christian frescoes were whitewashed rather than destroyed, preserving them beneath layers of plaster. But the Parthenon's greatest tragedy unfolded in 1687, when Venetian artillery struck gunpowder stored inside by Ottoman forces. The explosions shattered the building's midsection, sending sculptures crashing to the ground. Worse followed in the early 1800s when Lord Elgin removed about half the surviving friezes, now controversially displayed in London's British Museum. What remains today is a testament to resilience. The surviving friezes show Athena's olive tree miraculously sprouting in the ancient myth, a scene later Christians may have seen as foreshadowing the Virgin's purity. The mosque's mihrab niche still subtly alters the building's geometry, while the Christian apse leaves its ghostly imprint on the stone. The Parthenon's genius lies in how its very damage tells a story, one not of erasure but of endless adaptation. Even broken, it endures as a mirror of human devotion, reflecting back every era's attempt to touch the divine through stone and story. In the sun-scorched plains of present-day Pakistan, where the Indus River once nourished one of humanity's first urban experiments, the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro rise like a puzzle from the Bronze Age. This meticulously planned city thrived around 2500 BC, centuries before the Vedas were composed, before the concept of Hinduism as we know it even existed. At its heart lies the Great Bath, a brick-lined pool so precisely engineered that it still holds water today. But here's the mystery: in a civilization that left no temples, no grand statues of gods, why would this aquatic structure occupy the most sacred real estate in the city? The bath's design speaks of reverence, 12 meters long and 7 wide. It's sunk into the ground like a sunken courtyard, accessed by symmetrical staircases at either end. The bricks are fitted with bitumen to make them waterproof, an innovation normally reserved for grain storage, not public spaces. Surrounding it are small rooms that might have been changing areas or private ritual chambers, while an elaborate drainage system suggests water wasn't just stored but ceremonially replenished. This wasn't a place for casual bathing. Every detail implies ritual purification, something beyond the mundane. Archaeologists have long debated what ceremonies might have unfolded here. Some theorize it was used for communal water rituals, perhaps tied to the Indus River's life-giving floods. Others point to parallels with later Hindu practices like the tirtha, sacred bathing in rivers thought to wash away spiritual impurities. The bath's alignment with Mohenjo-Daro's grid suggests it held astrological significance, possibly linked to solstices or lunar cycles. Yet without deciphered texts or clear iconography, we're left reading the silence. What's tantalizing is how this space echoes through time. Centuries after Mohenjo-Daro's decline, Hindu texts would describe pushkarini, temple tanks used for ritual cleansing. Modern Hindu pilgrims still flock to sacred rivers like the Ganges for spiritual baths. Could these traditions carry faint whispers of the Great Bath's original purpose? The Indus Valley people may have vanished, but their reverence for water as a sacred force seems to have seeped into the spiritual DNA of the subcontinent. Perhaps the most haunting clue lies beneath the bath stairs, a series of small, unexplained cavities that might once have held offerings. Imagine priests placing terracotta figurines or grains into these niches before ceremonies, their meanings lost to the centuries. Mohenjo-Daro's Great Bath reminds us that sacred spaces don't need elaborate iconography to radiate power sometimes. The quietest stones hold the loudest echoes of devotion. Rising from the wheat fields of northern France like a stone prayer, Chartres Cathedral draws pilgrims and art lovers alike to its soaring spires and kaleidoscopic stained glass. But beneath this jewel of Gothic architecture, beneath even its 12th century foundations, flows something far older, a sacred spring where Celtic Druids once performed rituals centuries before Christ walked the earth. The cathedral we see today isn't just a Christian monument. It's a careful layering of faiths where medieval architects knowingly built upon ground already humming with ancient power. The clues are everywhere once you know where to look. Step inside the nave, and your gaze is drawn downward to one of the cathedral's most enigmatic features. An immense labyrinth inlaid into the stone floor, its winding path measuring over 260 meters from start to center. Medieval pilgrims would trace this path on their knees as a form of penitential journey, but the design predates Christianity by millennia. Similar spirals appear at Neolithic sites like Newgrange, carved by people who understood the labyrinth as a symbolic portal between worlds. Even more telling is what lies directly beneath the cathedral's crypt, a natural well so revered by pre-Christian locals that early church builders intentionally incorporated its chamber into their plans rather than sealing it away. This was no accident of construction. When fires destroyed earlier churches on this site in 743 and 1134, each rebuilding preserved access to the sacred spring. The well's water, long associated with fertility and healing, was Christianized as the Well of the Strong Saints, its powers attributed to martyrs instead of nature spirits. But folk memory persisted. As late as the 17th century, women would lower candles into the well. If a candle stayed lit, it signaled their prayers for children would be answered, a ritual with clear echoes of Druidic divination practices. The cathedral's very architecture whispers of this synthesis. Look closely at the famous Blue Virgin stained glass window, and you'll notice the Madonna stands atop a crescent moon, an ancient symbol of feminine divinity repurposed for Christian veneration. The column statues of the royal portal include mysterious figures holding what appear to be Druidic sickles, their meaning deliberately obscured but their presence undeniable. Even the cathedral's alignment is significant. During the summer solstice, sunlight streams through a specific clerestory window to illuminate a single stone in the labyrinth, a phenomenon that would have been equally meaningful to pagan sun worshippers as to medieval monks. What makes Chartres extraordinary isn't just its survival through wars and revolutions, but its unbroken thread of sacred purpose. The same waters that Druids believed connected to the underworld now fill baptismal fonts. The same labyrinth that may have guided prehistoric vision quests now serves as a meditative tool for modern spiritual seekers. This isn't mere coincidence, it's proof that some places retain their holiness across epochs, their power transcending any one religion's claim. Chartres stands as a testament to humanity's enduring instinct. When we find thin places between worlds, we keep returning to them, generation after generation, simply giving them magic new names. Nestled in the lush jungles of Chiapas, where howler monkeys call from the canopy, the ruins of Palenque emerge like a stone dream of the cosmos. Built between 600 and 800 CE during the Maya Classic period, this city's temples don't just scrape the sky, they converse with it. The Temple of the Inscriptions, Palenque's crown jewel, rises in 9-stepped layers, a deliberate echo of the 9 levels of Xibalba, the Maya underworld. But tilt your head just right during the winter solstice, and you'll witness something extraordinary. The setting sun aligns perfectly with the temple's central staircase, splitting the structure into twin silhouettes of light and shadow. This isn't random geometry, it's celestial choreography, proof that the Maya didn't just observe the heavens, they wove them into the very fabric of their sacred spaces. What makes Palenque's alignment so compelling is their precision and their possible roots in older wisdom. The city's astronomers tracked Venus with such accuracy they predicted its cycles within minutes over centuries. Yet beneath the Temple of the Cross, archaeologists found a curious clue, an older platform aligned not to Maya star charts, but to a different celestial event, the zenith passage, when the sun stands directly overhead. This solar phenomenon, critically important to earlier Mesoamerican cultures like the Olmec, suggests Palenque's builders may have inherited sacred blueprints from civilizations lost to time. The Maya didn't invent these alignments, they refined them, layering their own myths onto a foundation of astronomical knowledge passed down like a whispered secret. Step inside the Temple of the Foliated Cross, and the walls whisper of this fusion. The famous tablet within shows King Canbolam receiving divine authority from the maize god, a scene framed by celestial bands marking the sun's path at equinoxes. But look closer, the god's headdress sprouts not just maize but cacao pods and squash, crops first domesticated millennia before by cultures the Maya would later eclipse. The building's orientation captures the sunrise on February 11th and October 29th, dates that bracket the agricultural cycle in the region. This isn't just a temple, it's an almanac in stone, honoring both cosmic cycles and the Earth's fertility in a tradition stretching back to forgotten farmers who first read the sky as scripture. The true marvel of Palenque lies in how its architecture mirrors the Maya concept of time, not linear but layered. When archaeologist Alberto Ruz lifted a flagstone in the Temple of the Inscriptions in 1952, he discovered a stairway leading down to King Pakul's sarcophagus, its lid depicting the ruler reborn as the maize god amid cosmic symbols. The crypt's walls bore 9 stucco figures, likely ancestors or underworld lords positioned to mirror the 9 levels of the temple above. Here, in one vertical axis, Pakul's tomb connected underworld, earthly realm, and heavens, a physical manifestation of the Maya belief that sacred sites existed simultaneously in all dimensions. Modern researchers using 3D mapping have uncovered even more sophisticated alignments. The palace's central tower, long thought observational, actually frames Venus's northernmost position when viewed from the group of the cross temples. During the summer solstice, shadows from the Temple of the Sun's roof comb create a moving serpent of light that slithers down its stairs, an effect replicated at Chichen Itza's El Castillo, hinting at shared astronomical knowledge across Maya cities. Yet Palenque's genius was local too. Its unique valley location allowed precise tracking of planets against the Sierra Madre's silhouette, turning the entire city into a giant observatory where architecture and landscape collaborated to mark sacred time. Perhaps the most poignant evidence of Palenque's cosmic dialogue lies in its abandonment. By 900 CE, the city was silent, its astronomers gone. But the alignments remain, still marking solstices and planetary events for no human audience, just the jungle, the sky, and the ghosts of priests who once charted eternity in stone. Today's Maya descendants still speak of Kea, the sacred energy inhabiting ancient places. Standing at Palenque as dawn light slices through temple doorways, it's hard not to feel that Kea pulsing, not just from the Maya's work, but from whatever older truth they built upon, a celestial conversation that outlasts civilizations. Stone circles older than the pyramids stretch across the English countryside at Avebury, their weathered surfaces bearing silent witness to rituals spanning 5,000 years. Built around 2,600 BCE, centuries before Stonehenge's famous Sarsens were raised, this colossal complex once boasted 100 massive stones arranged in concentric rings, dwarfing its more famous neighbor in scale if not in fame. Today, modern Druids in white robes gather here to celebrate solstices, their chimes and chants mingling with the bleating of sheep that graze between the monoliths. But what cosmic secrets or earthly ceremonies first drew Neolithic builders to this exact patch of wind-swept land? The answer might lie beneath your feet or in the stars above. The scale of Avebury's original design is staggering. Imagine a circular bank and ditch enclosing 28 acres large enough to swallow 16 football fields, with stone circles nested inside like a prehistoric Russian doll. The surviving megaliths, some weighing over 40 tons, were dragged from miles away using ropes and rollers, then precisely positioned along the curve of the earthwork. Unlike Stonehenge's clean geometry, Avebury's stones are jagged and irregular, their surfaces carved with mysterious symbols now smoothed by millennia of rain. Archaeologists have found evidence of fires and feasting near the southern entrance, suggesting this was a place of gathering as much as worship, a sacred space where the living communed with forces beyond their understanding. But who or what were they connecting with? One theory points skyward. The inner stone circle's 28 pillars may mirror the moon's 28-day cycle, while the wider complex aligns with both solstice sunrises and lunar standstills. Professor Alexander Thom's surveys in the 1960s suggested the entire layout functioned as a giant astronomical calculator, predicting eclipses by tracking celestial movements against the horizon. Yet others argue the site's true purpose lies underground. Excavations have uncovered human remains near the southeastern stones, including a striking burial where a male skeleton was found cradling a bundle of antlers, perhaps a shaman interred with his ritual tools. The West Kennet Avenue, a parallel corridor of stones leading to Avebury from the south, aligns precisely with the winter solstice sunset, suggesting a procession route for spirits traveling to the afterlife. Modern Druids, drawn to Avebury since the 18th century revival of Celtic paganism, see the site through yet another lens. During summer solstice ceremonies, you might witness robed figures anointing stones with water from the nearby Swallowhead Spring, a tradition some trace to Neolithic water worship. The sanctuary, a smaller stone circle connected to Avebury by the West Kennet Avenue, becomes a focal point for hand-fasting rituals and lunar blessings. Yet even these contemporary practices hint at older truths. When archaeologist Aubrey Burl mapped the avenue's remaining stones, he noticed their alternating shapes, tall and slender versus broad and diamond-shaped, mirrored male and female fertility, symbols found in prehistoric art across Europe. Perhaps Avebury's greatest mystery isn't its original purpose, but its enduring magnetism. The same stones that Neolithic farmers might have touched for abundant harvests now bear the warmth of modern palms seeking connection. The ditch that once held ritual fires now cradles offerings of flowers and crystals left by 21st century pilgrims. Whether cosmic calendar, ancestral tomb, or something beyond our reckoning, Avebury whispers a truth echoed by sacred sites worldwide. That holiness isn't created by doctrine, but by the human need to reach beyond ourselves across time through stone toward the infinite. Emerging from the jungles of central Java like a stone mandala frozen in time, Borobudur's stepped terraces rise toward the heavens, a symphony of Buddhist devotion carved from volcanic rock. Built in the 9th century by the Sailendra dynasty, this massive stupa complex stretches nearly 400 feet across its square base, its 6 rectangular platforms crowned by 3 circular terraces adorned with 72 perforated stupas. Each detail whispers of meticulous intention. The relief panels depicting Buddha's life stretch over 3 miles if laid end to end, while the entire structure forms a 3-dimensional map of the Buddhist cosmos, from the earthly Kamadhatu to the formless Arupadhatu at its peak. But brush away the surface symbolism, and you'll find something remarkable. This monument doesn't just preach Buddhist doctrine. It breathes with the spirit of Java's ancient earth religions, seamlessly weaving indigenous ancestor veneration into its very stones. The synthesis reveals itself in subtle details. Look closely at the lower reliefs, and you'll spot scenes where Buddha's teachings unfold against unmistakably Javanese backdrops, rice paddies, palm trees, and traditional stilt houses mirroring the local landscape. The bell-shaped stupas crowning the upper terraces resemble ancient Indonesian burial mounds, their latticework allowing glimpses of the Buddha statues within like ancestors peering from the spirit world. Even the structure's orientation holds dual meaning. While pilgrims ascend clockwise in classic Buddhist fashion, their path also echoes the prehistoric Austronesian practice of circumambulating sacred mountains. This wasn't cultural appropriation, it was alchemy, a masterful blending of imported theology with local soul. Borobudur's architects may have drawn inspiration from Gunung Padang, a nearby megalithic site where terraced pyramids honored ancestral spirits centuries before Buddhism arrived. The temple's very shape, a stepped pyramid echoing volcanic peaks, resonates with indigenous beliefs that mountains were dwelling places of Hyong's ancestral deities. Some scholars argue the monument's hidden base chamber, decorated with reliefs of earthly desires, represents the underworld of Indonesian folklore, completing a vertical cosmology matching local traditions of upper, middle, and lower worlds. Even the placement of Buddha statues corresponds to sacred geography. The facing directions align with major Javanese volcanoes still considered spiritually potent today. Modern visitors can still trace this spiritual fusion. During Waisak, the Buddhist Vesak festival, monks chant sutras as moonlight illuminates the central stupa, but local farmers also leave offerings at the temple's corners, continuing pre-Buddhist rituals for soil fertility. The surrounding villages maintain legends of Sabdo Palon and Naya Jenggong, guardian spirits said to have watched over Borobudur long before the first stupa was raised. What makes this monument extraordinary isn't just its scale or craftsmanship, but how it embodies the Javanese genius for harmony, proving sacred spaces needn't erase what came before, but can weave old magic into new meaning, one carved stone at a time. At Karnak, the stones themselves seem to breathe with the weight of centuries, where towering columns rise like a forest of petrified devotion, each inscribed with names of gods who once ruled Egypt's spiritual landscape only to fade into obscurity. This sprawling complex, begun around 2000 BCE and expanded over 1500 years, isn't just a temple. It's a living archive of divine ambition, where pharaoh after pharaoh layered their piety and politics into the very walls. Walk through the great hypostyle hall and you're stepping into a sacred palimpsest, hieroglyphs honoring Amun-Ra, the king of gods, chiseled over earlier carvings of Montu, the warrior deity whose cult dominated Thebes before Amun's ascent. Even the columns tell stories, their papyrus bundle designs echoing the primordial marsh where creation began, yet their placement aligning with stars that guided rituals lost to time. The genius of Karnak lies in its restless evolution. When Amenhotep III built the Luxor temple as a southern extension, he wasn't just expanding real estate, he was reorienting the cosmic axis of Egyptian worship, linking Karnak's Amun to the fertility god Min in a theological fusion that mirrored his empire's reach. Centuries later, Akhenaten would rebel against this orthodoxy, erasing Amun's name and building shrines to the sun disk Aten just beyond Karnak's walls. But like a river diverted only to reclaim its course, Karnak's old gods returned after Akhenaten's death, his heresy dismantled stone by stone. The restored reliefs didn't just reinscribe Amun's dominance, they amplified it, with later pharaohs like Seti I and Ramses II competing to outdo each other's additions, turning the temple into a living contest of devotion. Yet Karnak's most fascinating transformations happened under foreign rulers. When the Ptolemies took control, they didn't impose Greek gods, they cleverly merged them. The goddess Mut, Amun's consort, became subtly associated with Hera, her lion-headed statues gaining new crowns that nodded to Hellenic tastes. The sacred lake, once a stage for nightly rituals where Amun's statue was bathed, now witnessed ceremonies blending Egyptian and Greek priests. Even the Romans, masters of cultural appropriation, added their stamp. Emperor Tiberius adorned the temple with obelisks, while early Christians scratched crosses into walls depicting Amun's triumph, as if hedging their spiritual bets. What survives today is more than architecture, it's a lesson in how sacred spaces absorb change without surrendering their essence. The same courtyard where Thutmose III celebrated military victories with golden processions later hosted Coptic churches in its corners. The festival hall, built to commemorate 30 years of royal rule, became a quarry for medieval mosques, its stones whispering old prayers in new walls. Karnak endures not because one faith prevailed, but because every conqueror recognized its power, a lesson written in hieroglyphs and limewash, in obelisks and olive trees, proving that holiness isn't erased, only rewritten. North of modern-day Mexico City, where the high desert meets towering mountains, the ruins of Teotihuacán stretch across the valley like a stone echo of divine ambition. Long before the Aztecs gave it its name, the place where gods were created, this sprawling metropolis thrived between the 1st and 6th centuries CE, its origins shrouded in mystery. The people who built these monumental pyramids left no written records, no royal tombs bearing their kings' names. Yet their sacred architecture speaks volumes. The Avenue of the Dead, arrow straight for nearly a mile, connects massive platforms and step pyramids that align with celestial events with jaw-dropping precision. The Aztecs, stumbling upon these ruins centuries after their abandonment, believed only gods could have raised such structures, but the truth is even more fascinating. At the heart of Teotihuacan's spiritual landscape looms the Pyramid of the Sun, a colossus of compacted earth and stone rising 216 feet, as tall as a 20-story building. Its construction required over 2 million tons of material, hauled without wheels or beasts of burden. But the real marvel lies in its alignment. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun sets directly behind the pyramid's western face, casting a shadow that slithers down its northern staircase like a descending serpent, a spectacle that would later inspire Aztec solar rituals. Nearby, the smaller but exquisitely decorated pyramid of the feathered serpent reveals even darker secrets. Excavations here uncovered a gruesome discovery: mass graves containing the remains of at least 200 sacrificial victims, many wearing necklaces of human jawbones. Their hands were bound behind their backs, suggesting ritual execution rather than warfare. What makes these sacrifices particularly chilling is their scale and method. Unlike later Aztec ceremonies performed in broad daylight, Teotihuacán's rituals were hidden victims interred in deep pits beneath the pyramid's tiers, accompanied by exotic offerings like jaguars and crocodiles. Some scholars believe these mirrored creation myths, with the pyramid itself representing the sacred mountain from which life emerged. Others see evidence of state terror, a warning carved in bone to maintain order in a city that may have housed 200,000 souls at its peak. The feathered serpent deity depicted on the pyramid's facade, later adopted by the Aztecs as Quetzalcoatl, suggests a spiritual continuity across civilizations, even as the original meaning of these rites faded into myth. Teotihuacán's decline around 550 CE remains one of archaeology's great puzzles. Was it drought, internal revolt? The charred remains in elite compounds hint at violent upheaval. Yet the city's sacred geography proved irresistible to later cultures. When the Aztecs migrated into the valley in the 14th century, they reinterpreted the ruins through their own cosmology, believing the sun and moon were created here through divine sacrifice. Moctezuma himself made pilgrimages to Teotihuacán, its crumbling pyramids becoming a backdrop for his own coronation rituals. Spanish chroniclers recorded Aztec legends of the Quinametzin, a race of giants said to have built the city, a poetic echo of the truth that ordinary hands raised these monuments for reasons we can only begin to decipher. Today, walking the Avenue of the Dead at dawn, you can still feel the weight of that mystery. Modern visitors climbing the pyramid's steep steps report strange sensations, whispers on the wind, and eerie resonance in the stone. Archaeologists using muon tomography have recently discovered hidden chambers beneath the feathered serpent pyramid, hinting at undiscovered royal tombs or ritual spaces. Meanwhile, local Nahua communities still leave offerings of copal incense at the site's springs, maintaining traditions that may stretch back to Teotihuacán's original inhabitants. The city's true genius lies in this unbroken thread of reverence, proof that sacred ground needs no translation, only the human instinct to stand where heaven once touched earth. Rising from the stark beauty of the Sinai Peninsula, Mount Sinai stands as one of history's most contested sacred peaks, a mountain revered long before Moses supposedly received the Ten Commandments on its slopes. The very identity of this holy site is shrouded in debate, with at least 3 different mountains vying for the title of the biblical Sinai. The traditional site, Jebel Musa, crowned by the 6th century St. Catherine's Monastery, draws Christian, Jewish, and Muslim pilgrims alike. Yet archaeological evidence suggests this mountain's sanctity predates Exodus by millennia, with local Bedouin tribes calling it Jebel el-Lawz, the Mountain of Almonds, and whispering of ancient deities who once dwelled in its crevices. The competing claims begin with the Bible itself. Exodus describes Sinai as a volcano smoking, trembling, and echoing with thunder, yet Jebel Musa shows no volcanic history. Some scholars argue the real sign lies across the Gulf of Aqaba in modern Saudi Arabia, where the blackened peak of Jebel al-Lawz matches biblical descriptions of fire and ash. Others point to Egypt's Serabit el-Qadam, where turquoise miners worshipped Hathor, the cow-headed goddess, centuries before Hebrew tribes entered the region. Even the name Sinai may derive from Sin, the Mesopotamian moon god venerated in these deserts long before monotheism took root. The mountain's holiness isn't just disputed, it's layered, each faith writing its story over older whispers of divinity. St. Catherine's Monastery, clinging to Jebel Musa's foothills, embodies this spiritual palimpsest. Built where Byzantine Empress Helena claimed the burning bush once blazed, the monastery's walls enclose a living bush said to be the original, a twist of nature revered by Muslims as the site where Moses spoke to God through the Quranic S.A.1a37W Macron tree. But the real treasure lies hidden in the monastery's library, the Codex Sinaiticus, a 4th century Bible older than the oldest complete Hebrew Torah, alongside ancient manuscripts blending Christian, Jewish, and pagan wisdom. These texts prove the mountain was a crossroads of faith long before the monastery's founding, a place where scribes preserved knowledge while empires rose and fell around them. What makes Sinai extraordinary isn't just the debate over its identity, but the way each tradition acknowledges the mountain's primal power. Bedouin guides still point to weather-worn petroglyphs of horned animals near Jebel Musa's summit, possible remnants of prehistoric bull worship echoing the biblical golden calf. Pilgrims ascending the 750 steps of repentance at dawn follow a path that may have once led to Nabatean altars. Even the 10 Commandments delivery mirrors older theophanies, where gods revealed laws on mountaintops from Mesopotamia to Greece. Whether this particular peak witnessed Moses' revelation matters less than its enduring role as a mirror for humanity's search for divine order, a struggle etched into its stones by countless hands across countless centuries. In the dense jungles of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, Chichen Itza's pyramids rise like stone orchestras conducting the movements of the cosmos. Built between 600 and 1200 CE, this city wasn't just a Mayan stronghold, it was a breathtaking fusion of two worlds. When Toltec warriors descended from central Mexico, they didn't conquer Chichen Itza so much as marry their brutal warrior cult to the Maya's celestial precision. The result, a sacred site where the gentle mathematics of the stars collided with the blood-stained rituals of a militarized faith, creating something entirely new under the jungle sun. At the heart of this fusion stands El Castillo, the iconic step pyramid dedicated to Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god. At first glance, its 91 steps on each of its 4 sides seem purely architectural, but add them together with the shared platform on top, and you get 365, one for each day of the solar year. This isn't just a temple, it's a stone calendar perfectly aligned so that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts triangular shadows along the pyramid's northwestern staircase. The effect, a colossal serpent slithering down from heaven to earth, its diamond-backed body made of light and shadow, connecting the celestial and terrestrial realms in a way that would leave any onlooker breathless. The Maya called this Kukulkan's descent, a moment when the boundaries between worlds blurred, and the Toltecs, who worshipped the same deity as Quetzalcoatl, saw it as divine validation of their rule. But the real magic of Chichen Itza lies in its duality. Just northeast of El Castillo, the Temple of the Warriors sprawls with rows of square columns, each carved with Toltec battle scenes and grim-faced warriors. These aren't the graceful astronomers of classic Mayan cities like Palenque. These are soldiers, their stone eyes fixed on some distant conflict. Nearby, the Great Ball Court stretches 545 feet, long enough to hold 2 modern soccer fields, its walls etched with scenes of ritual decapitation. The acoustics here are so precise that a whisper at one end can be heard clearly at the other, as if the stones themselves were designed to carry the groans of the defeated. Yet even this brutality was tied to the cosmos. The ball game symbolized the movement of celestial bodies, with the captain's sacrifice ensuring the sun would rise again. Perhaps the most haunting evidence of this cultural marriage lies in the sacred cenote, a gaping sinkhole where turquoise waters hide centuries of offerings and bones. Unlike the Mayan practice of sprinkling jade and gold into lakes, the Toltecs introduced mass human sacrifice. divers have recovered the remains of over 200 individuals, many children, their bones bearing marks of violent death. Yet surrounding these grim finds are exquisite artifacts: golden discs from Panama, jade from Guatemala, obsidian from central Mexico, proving Chichen Itza was both a place of terror and a glittering crossroads of trade and tribute. What makes Chichen Itza unforgettable isn't just its engineering or its horrors, but how it embodies the paradox of sacred spaces. The same city that perfected celestial alignments also perfected cruelty. The same steps that measure the year with mathematical precision once ran red with sacrificial blood. And when the afternoon sun strikes El Castillo just right, casting that serpent of shadow toward the earth, you're left wondering, were the Maya and Toltecs worshipping the same god in different ways, or did they each see something entirely different in that descending light? The stones won't say, but they'll leave you standing in the silence of that question long after the last echo of your footsteps fade. Carved from the rose-red cliffs of southern Jordan, Petra isn't just a city of stone, it's a labyrinth of faiths where the whispers of forgotten gods still echo through narrow canyons. Built by the Nabateans in the 4th century BC, this desert fortress began as a sanctuary for Dashara, the mysterious mountain god whose black stone idol once stood in the Qasr al-Bint temple. Yet walk its winding Sikh today, and you'll find crosses chiseled into rock faces where pagan symbols once dominated, silent witnesses to Petra's transformation from a bustling caravan city of incense traders to a Byzantine bishop's seat. The shift wasn't abrupt, it was a slow rewriting of sacred space where Christian mosaics gradually covered Nabatean frescoes, and churches rose beside temples without fully erasing them. What makes Petra's spiritual evolution so remarkable is how its architecture adapted. The iconic treasury, or al-Kosne, its Hellenistic facade glowing like embers in the desert sun, likely began as a royal tomb or temple to Isis. By the 6th century CE, Byzantine Christians repurposed its inner chamber, leaving behind faint frescoes of saints beside older carvings of winged victories. Nearby, the urn tomb became a cathedral, its soaring halls now framing an apse where wine once poured for Dashara's rituals was replaced by Eucharistic wine. Even the high place of sacrifice, where Nabatean priests once offered animals to their gods, saw new ceremonies. Crosses carved into the altar suggest Christian pilgrims still recognized the power of this elevated sanctuary, despite rejecting its original purpose. But Petra's true genius lies beneath the surface. The same hydraulic engineering that channeled flash floods through cisterns and terracotta pipes, allowing this desert city to flourish, took on spiritual significance. The Nabateans revered water as a gift from the goddess Alat, carving sacred basins into rock where offerings were made. Centuries later, Byzantine priests baptized converts in those same pools, blessing the waters that once honored a pagan deity. The Sikh's winding path, originally designed to control floodwaters, became a processional route for Christian feast days, its towering walls now echoing with hymns instead of caravan bells. Modern visitors can trace these layers in Petra's quiet corners. In the Byzantine church, mosaic floors depict personified wisdom alongside crosses, a subtle nod to older philosophical traditions. The so-called triclinium banqueting halls, where Nabateans held ritual meals for the dead, later served as monastic refectories. Even the city's abandonment in the 7th century couldn't erase its sanctity. Local Bedouin tribes maintained oral traditions about the lost city, attributing its construction to jinn or the biblical figure Moses. Today, as sunlight filters through the Sikh to illuminate the treasury's facade, it's easy to feel the weight of centuries pressing down, not as a palimpsest of competing faiths, but as proof that holiness, like water in the desert, finds its way through stone. Standing sentinel on the windswept slopes of Rapa Nui, the Easter Island Moai gaze inland with hollow eyes, monolithic witnesses to a spiritual revolution. Carved between 1200 and 1600 CE, These colossal stone figures predate the island's famous birdman cult by centuries, their origins rooted in a very different kind of veneration. The moai weren't just sculptures, they were vessels believed to house the spirits of revered ancestors who watched over living descendants. Each statue's back faces the sea, not as a dismissal of the ocean's power, but as a protective barrier. Stone guardians shielding vulnerable villages from the unknown vastness beyond the shore. The scale of this ancestor worship still staggers the imagination. Picture clans competing to erect ever larger moai, some weighing over 80 tons, quarried from the volcanic rock of Ronoroku crater. Transporting these giants across miles of rugged terrain without wheels or draft animals required not just engineering prowess but profound spiritual motivation. Oral traditions speak of the statues walking to their ahu platforms with the help of divine mana, a force woven into the island's very soil. Recent experiments suggest the moai may have indeed been rocked forward in a laborious upright shuffle, ropes groaning under the strain as teams chanted rhythmically to maintain balance. Imagine the sight, dozens of these stone giants inching across the landscape like a slow-motion army, their blank eyes fixed on some celestial horizon only they could see. Yet by the 17th century, something shifted. The last moai were toppled, their red stone topknots rolling into the dirt as a new cult emerged, the Tangata Manu, or birdman ceremony. Where ancestor worship had been communal, this ritual was fiercely competitive. Each year, warriors scaled sheer cliffs to retrieve the first sooty-tern egg of the season from the islet of Motu Nui. The winner's clan gained control over resources for a year, their chief taking the title of birdman, a spiritual leader bridging human and avian realms. The reason behind this dramatic shift may lie in the island's ecological collapse. Pollen studies reveal a grim timeline. As deforestation accelerated, the once lush palm forests vanished, triggering soil erosion and food shortages. With no trees left to build canoes for fishing and ancestral favor seemingly failing to prevent famine, islanders may have turned to the seabirds as symbols of survival. The moai's abandonment wasn't just practical, it was theological. Archaeologists have found tools left mid-carving in Ronoroku, as if the sculptors simply walked away. Some toppled statues bear marks of deliberate desecration, their eye sockets smashed to blind them. Yet even in ruin, the moai retained power. Later birdman petroglyphs were often carved near fallen statues, suggesting the old gods weren't entirely forgotten, just reinterpreted. Modern Rapa Nui descendants still speak of the moai's enduring presence not as relics, but as living connections to those who first shaped the island's soul. The true lesson of Easter Island isn't one of ecological hubris, but of spiritual resilience, how humanity continually rewrites its relationship with the divine when the world shifts beneath its feet. Rising from the ochre sands of Australia's outback like a colossal, weathered heart, Uluru pulses with stories older than human memory. To the Anangu, its traditional custodians, this 600-million-year-old sandstone monolith isn't just a geological wonder, it's a living library of Tijukurpa, the Dreamtime. Every fissure, waterhole, and cave whispers ancestral lore. Here, the Mala people fled from vengeful dogmen. There, the Cunea python woman struck the ground in grief, her tears filling rock pools that still sustain life in the desert. These stories aren't myths to the Anangu. They're living maps encoding survival knowledge and moral codes into the very contours of the land. For millennia, initiation rituals and sacred ceremonies unfolded in Uluru's shadow, the rock serving as both classroom and cathedral for one of the world's oldest continuous cultures. Yet since the late 20th century, a very different kind of pilgrimage has transformed Uluru's slopes. New Age seekers flock to the site, drawn by rumors of cosmic energy vortices and extraterrestrial connections. Instagram influencers pose for sunrise selfies at sacred Tijukat Jara cave, while spiritual tourists smuggle crystals onto the summit despite Anangu pleas not to climb. The dissonance is staggering, where traditional owners see the physical traces of ancestral beings, outsiders project chakra alignments and UFO landing theories onto the same stone. Some tour operators even market Uluru as Australia's answer to Sedona or Stonehenge, a power center for global energy grids, stripping the site of its specific cultural context to fit a generic spirituality buffet. The clash isn't merely philosophical, it's written into the landscape itself. At Kantju Gorge, where Anangu elders teach children about the Wanampi water snake's creation of permanent water sources, visitors now scatter rose quartz for vibration cleansing. The rock's iron oxide stains, scientifically explained by mineral leaching, are reinterpreted as bloodlines of ancient star beings. Most painfully, the 2019 closure of the climbing route, a hard-won victory for indigenous sovereignty, was met with backlash from tourists who viewed their personal, transformative experiences as more valid than 60,000 years of continuous stewardship. What's often missed in these debates is how Uluru's true power resists commodification. Unlike Stonehenge's solstice alignments or Delphi's intoxicating vapors, the rock's sacredness isn't tied to spectacular phenomena. Its wisdom unfolds slowly, the way rain cascades down rarely seen channels after storms, carving temporary waterfalls that mirror dreaming tracks, or how certain caves amplify whispered conversations across impossible distances. The Anangu have long understood these subtleties, reading the land as one would a relative's face. Modern seekers scrambling for instant enlightenment often walk right past Uluru's quietest miracles, the way dawn light turns its eastern face into molten gold precisely during the desert's coolest hunting hours, or how rock art pigments made from kaolin clay outlast industrial paints by centuries. Perhaps the most profound lesson lies in the Anangu's response to this spiritual tourism surge. Rather than outright rejecting outsiders, they've created guided walks where visitors can learn Tijucurpa stories, not as exotic folklore, but as ongoing relationships with the land. At the cultural center, displays explain that Uluru's energy isn't some free-floating cosmic force, but the accumulated resonance of generations living in right relationship with country. It's a radical invitation to experience sacredness not through extraction but through responsibility. The rock doesn't need crystal grids or alien theories to be extraordinary. It simply is, whispering its ancient truths to those willing to listen at the speed of the desert wind. On the sun-baked island of Malta, the stones of Haga Kim rise from the earth like the weathered bones of some forgotten goddess. Built around 3600 BC, 1,000 years before Stonehenge's first circle, these megaliths form one of the oldest freestanding structures on Earth. Walk through the temple's oval chambers today, and your fingers might brush against spirals and bulbous carvings that archaeologists call fat lady figures, curvaceous stone women with exaggerated hips and breasts, their forms echoing across the island's prehistoric art. These weren't mere decorations, they were prayers in stone, offerings to a divine feminine principle that governed life, death, and regeneration in the Neolithic world. The temple's design reveals an intimate understanding of celestial rhythms. The main doorway aligns perfectly with the summer solstice sunrise, allowing dawn light to pierce the inner chambers and illuminate a specific altar stone. Smaller oracle holes in the walls may have amplified ritual chanting or allowed glimpses of ceremonies to select observers. But the most striking feature is the fat lady statuette found here, a seated goddess with pleated skirt and folded hands, her serene face witnessing millennia of shifting beliefs. Similar figures appear in nearby temples like Mnajdra and Toxion, suggesting a widespread cult of a mother-created deity, her worship intertwined with the agricultural cycles that sustained Malta's early farmers. Centuries later, Phoenician sailors arriving around 750 BC brought their own goddess Astarte, the voluptuous deity of love and war whose symbols merged seamlessly with the island's existing fertility imagery. Excavations at Tas Silg, a hilltop site overlaying older megalithic ruins, revealed Astarte's crescent moon, symbols carved beside Neolithic spirals, as if the newcomers recognized the sacred thread connecting their pantheon to Malta's ancient Earth Mother. By Roman times, the site became a temple to Juno, her peacock iconography blending with Astarte's lions in a spiritual palimpsest. Christianity's arrival brought the most dramatic transformation, yet even here continuity pulsed beneath the surface. The Chapel of St. Mark, built near Hagia Kim in the medieval period, drew pilgrims to a miraculous icon of the Virgin Mary. Locals noted how the Madonna's feast day coincided with summer solstice celebrations once held at the megaliths. Over time, the fat ladies were reinterpreted as saints or hidden away in museums, their original meaning obscured, but their essence lingered. Rural Maltese women well into the 20th century left offerings of milk and honey at certain stones, whispering prayers for fertility that would have sounded hauntingly familiar to their Neolithic ancestors. What makes Hagia Kim extraordinary isn't just its age, but its unbroken chain of reverence. The same stones that witnessed solstice rituals 6,000 years ago now frame sunset selfies, yet something intangible remains. Archaeologists using ground-penetrating radar recently discovered hidden chambers beneath the temple, possibly used for initiation rites. Meanwhile, folklorists record persistent legends of giantess builders and stone oracles, suggesting the old stories never truly died. Standing in the temple's southern alcove at dawn, watching light creep across those ancient carvings, you can almost hear the whispers of generations who came to this spot seeking the same thing, a moment of connection with whatever force pulses beneath the surface of the visible world. The goddess may have many names, but the ground she walks never forgets. On the banks of the Ganges, where dawn mist curls over centuries of whispered prayers, Varanasi stands as a living testament to sacred continuity. This labyrinth of ghats and temples, believed by Hindus to have been founded by Shiva himself, pulses with a spiritual energy that has drawn pilgrims for over 3,000 years. But the city's holiness isn't confined to any one faith. Its winding alleys tell a story of absorption and adaptation, where Buddhist stupas, Jain shrines, and Mughal mosques rise alongside the golden spires of Shiva's eternal abode. At the heart of Varanasi's spiritual magnetism lies the Kashi Vishwanath Temple, its current structure rebuilt in the 18th century after repeated destructions by Muslim rulers. Beneath its gilded dome, the Jyotirlinga, a primordial symbol of Shiva, radiates with a power Hindus believe predates all other deities. Yet just a stone's throw away, the Dhamak Stupa marks the spot where Buddha delivered his first sermon after enlightenment, turning the wheel of Dharma in the same city where Hindu sages had chanted Vedic hymns centuries earlier. Jain pilgrims still flock to the nearby Sri Parshvanath Digambar Jain temple, honoring their 23rd Tirthankara who attained omniscience in these very streets. The city's genius lies in how these traditions coexist. At Manikarnika Ghat, where Hindu cremation pyres burn ceaselessly, Muslim families have lived for generations as caretakers of the sacred fire, a role passed down since Mughal times. The Jayanvapi Mosque, controversially built atop a demolished Shiva temple in the 17th century, still incorporates original Hindu pillars in its structure, their carvings peeking through plaster like suppressed memories. Even the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb, infamous for temple destruction, couldn't resist Varanasi's pull. His architects reused carved Hindu stones to construct mosques, their hybrid designs mirroring the city's spiritual DNA. What makes Varanasi extraordinary isn't just its layers, but how each faith transformed the others without erasure. Buddhist monks meditating along the Ganges adopted Hindu fire rituals into their practice, while Shaivite ascetics incorporated yogic techniques from Jain adepts. The Ramanagar Fort's Ram Leela performances, dramatizing Hindu epics, evolved under the patronage of Muslim Nawabs who recognized the story's universal appeal. Today, the evening Ganga Aarti ceremony, with its synchronized lamps and chanting priests, bears traces of Sufi whirling and Buddhist mantra circles, a liturgical fusion that could only emerge from such sustained coexistence. Modern Varanasi still thrums with this syncretic energy. The same ghats where Hindu pilgrims bathe at sunrise host evening Qawwali sessions honoring Sufi saints. University scholars debate Sanskrit scriptures alongside Persian poetry in cafes where Kabir's doh has rejecting all religious labels still echo from the walls. The city reminds us that holiness isn't about purity, but persistence, the way sacred ground gathers meaning like the Ganges gathers tributaries, becoming deeper and broader with every tradition it carries forward. To walk Varanasi's timeless streets is to witness humanity's unbroken conversation with the divine, written not in stone, but in the living breath of those who still come to kneel where countless others have knelt before. What ties these 25 sacred sites together isn't just their age or architectural splendor, it's their uncanny ability to outlast the very gods they were built to honor. From Göbekli Tepe's prehistoric pillars to Sharta's cathedral's labyrinthine echoes of pagan rites, each location tells the same profound truth: holiness isn't erased, only reinterpreted. Like a river that carves new channels while flowing over ancient bedrock, faith after faith has poured its meaning into these spaces, leaving behind layers of devotion that still pulse with life today. Consider the patterns we've witnessed again and again. The Pantheon's oculus, once framing sacrifices to Roman gods, now floods light onto Christian altars. Machu Picchu's celestial alignments, refined by Inca engineers over older sacred blueprints, still draw modern seekers to its mountain perch. Even Petra's rose-red tombs, where Nabatean incense once perfumed the air for Dashara, became vessels for Byzantine hymns without losing their numinous charge. This isn't coincidence, it's a testament to humanity's instinctive recognition that some places are thresholds, where the boundary between earth and the divine feels thin enough to touch across millennia. The implications ripple into our own era. If history holds true, today's most revered sites, whether St. Peter's Basilica, the Western Wall, or the Kaaba, may one day cradle the rituals of faiths not yet born. Imagine future pilgrims kneeling in Notre Dame's vaulted shadows, whispering prayers to deities we can't yet name. Picture the dome of the rock's golden ceiling reflecting the chants of a spirituality that reinterprets its sacred geometry for a new age. The lesson of these 25 sites isn't just about the past. It's an invitation to wonder what fragments of our current devotion might endure when our religions have joined Athena and Amun-Ra in the pantheon of history. Now we turn to you. Which of these transformations stunned you the most? Was it the Hagia Sophia's golden mosaics peeking through Islamic calligraphy, or the way Artemis' many-breasted effigy quietly gave way to the Virgin Mary's serene gaze? Perhaps you've stood at one of these sites and felt the weight of their layered divinity for yourself. Share your thoughts below, and if you know of another sacred space where the stones remember older gods, add it to the conversation. The map of holy ground is never complete. It simply waits for new hands to trace its contours and new voices to whisper its oldest stories.